Welcome to the Brand and Market Podcast, where branding clarity meets marketing strategy. I'm your host, Allie Haney, founder of Brand and Market, a boutique agency dedicated to helping small businesses craft intentional brands and effective marketing plans. Each week, I share practical tips and insights to help you, especially those of you in real estate-related industries, build a standout brand to attract your brand's biggest fans. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. I'm your host, Allie Haney. Today with me, I have Mr. Zac Willms. He is a native of Canada, but now lives in Mexico, and we'll jump into today's episode, and he can tell you his whole story of how he migrated south. But he is the owner of Grotto Getaways, and he also owns Zuna Stays. So Grotto Getaways is his micro resort, glamping resort in Canada. And we get to kind of jump in today, get a little bit more nitty-gritty detail about how that came to be, as well as Zuna Stays, which is his property management company in Mexico. So without further ado, Zac, I would love for you to give a little bit of an intro and bio about yourself.
Absolutely, Ali. Thanks for having me here. Looking forward to the conversation. So myself, I've been in real estate now for 10 years. Kind of had the classic journey of starting off with single family rentals, duplexes, multifamily. I did a bunch of renovation, BRRRR type of strategies. But early on in my career, I always had a passion for travel. And I was one of the first Airbnbs launched in my city in a duplex. Like just as it started, I picked it up. I was, still very young in the space. I was only like 21 years old. I used Airbnb and I was like, you know what? Let me try to be a host. Just as I was getting started, there was like maybe 5 other listings in my city. And I was able to like double my revenue off a 1 bedroom that I would have been able to get on a long-term rental basis, on a short-term rental basis. But I was everything. I was the cleaner. I was the host. I was picking up maintenance materials. I was the maintenance guy, the handyman. I did absolutely everything. So needless to say, it didn't last long because that is not the proper way to do short-term rentals. But I always had an itch to get back into the short-term rental space. And about 4 years ago, a campground came up in a beautiful area about 2.5 hours outside of Toronto. It's very tourist friendly. There's lots of national parks. It's got crystal clear turquoise blue water. And glamping was just starting as this industry that was kind of taken off in the outdoor hospitality space. Myself and a few business partners of mine saw the campground. It was older, kind of the classic mom and pop owned for a bunch of years. Never really operated it to its full capacity. Did a lot of stuff in cash, bunch of tents and nightly rentals. But it was a beautiful site, 100 acres, and had this really cool opportunity that we thought, can we add some glamping and some really cool RVs and tents to this place and really bring up the revenue in it? So we saw this really cool opportunity and decided to take some action before glamping really even came about.
That's amazing. I'm going to bring us back to like your start. So with that duplex, did you house hack with that? You were still living in one of the units.
Yeah, I lived in one of the units for a while, and I rented out the upstairs on Airbnb. And it worked really, really well for about a year and a half until competition kind of took over and got way more flooded in the market once everybody realized what you could do.
Yeah, I actually went to a conference earlier this year called Level Up Your Listing. And there was, funny enough, a woman who owned a co-hosting business there that she started in Canada. I don't remember what province she was in, but when she started in Canada, I guess wherever she was, just shut down all short-term rentals. And she ended up having to move to Mexico too. Did you run into any of that just being totally shut down with the duplex before you moved on to Grotto?
Not totally shut down, but the licensing came out, the taxes came out, and everything started to change a little bit. The banks started not to like the word Airbnb when you go for a refinance. So, like, it was just coming out where the hotels were pushing the cities to start implementing some rules and restrictions. And you know how it is, right? All of a sudden, neighbors are complaining about parties, and nothing happened in mine, luckily, but all of that chatter just ends up making rules and licensing and hurts the bottom line.
Yeah, totally. We ran into that in Kentucky. Like, not in my backyard, you're not going to do that kind of thing. So, yeah, I understand. And probably with a duplex, there were probably other ones that were close by too. So, neighbors just don't know what they don't know, especially a lot of it really depends on the operator of the Airbnb as to what's going to go down in the Airbnb. So, they don't know that they can trust you, you know?
And all it took was like one guest parking in the wrong parking space that was somebody else's parking space and couldn't get a hold of the guest to move it within the next hour. And yeah, everything just gets a lot more stressful in those cases. So
So, you were already kind of familiar with the short-term rental world when you went in to purchase Grotto Getaways, but just in my experience of short-term rentals and transitioning over to like something with multiple units on one property, I know that's a big transition. Walk me through what that transition was like for you, perhaps in terms of zoning, perhaps in terms of like operations and management. Just throw it at me.
Yeah, so I've always done real estate and I've always managed real estate. Like I have a long-term rental management business, so I've always been in the property management maintenance space. So that part wasn't too scary. The zoning aspect of the property, which was one of the biggest reasons why we bought it, was all already commercially zoned for trailers and campgrounds. So it was extremely easy for us to add on more sites and get as many units as we wanted. There was a cap, but the cap was so big that it would have never even made sense for us to actually expand it to its fullest capacity because everybody just would have been on top of each other. But that ended up being one of the biggest benefits to us because that city over time added in licensing, added in taxes, capped the amount of units places could have, but the commercial zoning components and properties were always excluded from those lists. So as stuff kind of get got even worse in that area, and like the typical cottage owner was getting squeezed by licensing and taxes pushing down, and then the amount of Airbnbs they were allowed in the city was getting squeezed, we were just thriving. So it worked out extremely, extremely well in that instance.
Wow, those people that were looking for a short-term stay were then being pushed to you guys because of that.
Exactly. It was like pushing out more competition in our area from us. So it was
Oh,
a
what a silver lining. Got out of the duplex world and into the glamping world.
Yeah, exactly. It's honestly just going with what the city wanted, right? Like the city always designated this property to be for tourists and campgrounds and commercial. So it's really just doing what they want. It's like you told us this property is for this, and now we're doing it to its fullest capacity.
So, what did the makeup of the campground look like when you guys purchased it? What was the number of sites? What type of sites?
Yeah, so they had about 20 seasonal rentals. Most of them had been there for like the last 10 years. They were paying anywhere from like $1,500 to like $2,500 for the entire season. They were fully serviced sites with water, electricity, sewers. So those were obviously way below market value at that point. And then what this owner did is they decided to try to squeeze in as many of those like RV pad sites as they possibly could before selling it to try to get a higher price for the actual sale of the site. So he added in like an extra 35 RV sites. And then there was about another 20 tent camping sites, which is just grass. There's no electricity, no water, or anything of that nature. So I think when we purchased it, he was around like 72 sites total. And one of the first things we did is cut it right down because they were, in a literally just in a big field with posts for RV sites that have electricity, post pad, no trees in between, no privacy in between. You're basically just stacking them as close together as possible without any nature or beauty in the way to block yourself from the next neighbors. So wasn't glamping in any sense.
You took pad sites out. I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
I know. Well, we were trying to go for that quiet, luxurious, like nice experience away in the forest. And when we saw those sites, we were like, there's no way we could run these and still try to be glamorous camping when you're that close to each other.
So, with that being said, when you guys were doing the numbers, were you able to charge more with less sites because of that?
Yeah, so what we did first things first was we had to get rid of the seasonal sites. Those were the lowest performers per site because at least the RV sites that they had, we could cut them in half, still charge a half decent amount, give everybody more space, and at least get some revenue from those sites. The tent sites, they were okay because, typical tent sites have at least trees in the way and it's like covered in greenery. So like we kept all those. All of the seasonal sites we got rid of though. We bought some of the trailers off some of the seasonal owners since they haven't been moved in so long. We just completely renovated them, like made them look kind of nice and Instagrammable. And then what we did, which was the biggest ROI boost, was added 2 glamping tents on like nice 20-foot decks. And those basically booked out 100% for that entire year. We couldn't believe like the occupancy, the pricing that we were getting. We just had 2 to start and they completely booked out the first season at like 100% occupancy.
Wait, 100% occupancy in Canada? Does that mean like all year round?
No, just for our season. So our season
Okay,
only
okay.
runs, yeah, nobody's staying in the winter. But our typical season is like May long weekend until basically like mid October. before it gets too cold and the weather doesn't cooperate with us enough.
Okay, so what did those glamping sites look did they have electric and water as well?
No, so at the time, those were just simple tent sites that had no electricity, no water. We have a public bathhouse.
It was just that the tent was already there.
The tent was there. It looked super nice. It was something that Airbnb just didn't have. Like in our entire area, nobody was really doing it at the time. So it was super unique, super interesting, and people just went crazy for them.
So were you able to still list on Airbnb for those?
Yep, we still listed on Airbnb just without electricity, without water, shared bathrooms. So we were definitely blazing a new trail for sure.
Wild to me. You said about 72 sites when you first purchased it. You guys took some of the RV sites out, added glamping tents. So now we've got a little bit more spread out, a little bit more luxurious, a little bit more Instagrammable, as you put it. So now what does it look like? Is it still just the two glamping tents?
No, so at the end of this year, we were sitting at 12 trailer sites, another 14 tents, 4 geodesic domes, and building on some amenities as well too for the site. So it was a big expansion over the last couple of years. Every year we just kept adding more, buying more trailers, taking some of the profits, recycling it back into the business, kind of seeing what was working. I think at some point we diluted the tent glamping market. I think there was a point where once we were at like 14 of these glamping tents, we took some of them and added 2 beds instead of 1 mattress, so it could kind of sleep a family, which I think did really well. We made some pet friendly and some not pet friendly, which helped some of our like weaker performers do well. So we kind of played around with a lot of different levers that we could pull. But I think we were starting to hit that capacity on the glamping tent market, which is why we went into the geodesic domes, which were a massive, massive hit over this past year.
So what does the geodesic dome look like? Is that like a permanent structure?
So technically, in the eyes of the city, no, because it's basically just one of those frames that you put the canvas over top of. So we could remove them. We weren't going to remove them over the winter because they actually are snow rated to be able to stay up. But in the eyes of the city, we did need building permits because they are still technically a temporary structure.
Do they have heating and electric?
We ran air conditioning in them, and we ran space heaters in a little bit of the shoulder season to kind of keep them warm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the geodesic domes are all those also at like 100% occupancy as well?
Those were very close when we launched them this year. We launched them about halfway through the year, and Airbnb, our website, booking.com, everybody just loved them. So they got up pretty close. I would say they were somewhere around like 70 or 80% occupied. And they were by far our highest ADR on the site, even above trailers that had kitchens and private bathrooms. They were beating out that competition.
Just because it was unique architecture.
Exactly. Exactly.
Interesting. Do you care to share the ADRs, that like comparison between geodesic dome, glamping tent, etc.?
Yeah, happy to. So I would say on our busy season, our glamping tents were averaging around, $185 to like $250 a night. That's kind of like the lowest end to the highest end. Our trailers averaged from about $200 a night to up to like $320 a night because we had some on the bigger side, some on the more luxurious side, and then some kind of smaller, more built for couples. And then the geodesic domes were averaging from like $300 up to about $450 a night.
Holy moly. It's so funny that you're saying this because as we do this interview, offline, I mentioned that I'm here painting, and that's why I look crazy like a contractor right now. And this house is a geodesic dome.
Nice. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a concrete dome. So this is like very much a permanent structure, a single family home, just very quirky one. And I'm like $300 to $400 a night for a geodesic camping. That's
And that's
crazy.
no water, like only enough electricity basically to run an air conditioning and charge your cell phone. Nothing more than that. No bathroom inside, no kitchen. It was very just beautiful tent, great design, looking out into the forest, and people went crazy for them.
Yeah. So you mentioned that it's commercially zoned, but it was on this like beautiful view. Can you tell me more about the landscape of the 100 acres that it was on?
Yeah, we had a really nice pond kind of right in the center of it. We have some wetlands on the back of the property. We have this huge, expansive forest. It's like 90 acres. So we cut trails throughout the forest so that people could go on hikes. The biggest seller, really, of our property was just its location to all these national parks. and to these cliffs, to these beautiful hiking trails, until like one of the most popular tourist areas that at least my area in Canada has on the East Coast. We have people traveling from all over Canada, the US, and even overseas from like Europe. We had travelers come in from. So we had people from all over the world coming to stay with us, which was awesome to see.
How close were the national parks to you, or are the national parks to you?
They were all about 10 to 15-minute drives. So a lot of people would come for a 3-night stay, and they would usually do at least one or two of the national parks, and then usually spend a day exploring the little town close by and doing different things like that.
When you found that piece of property and that deal, what was your first reaction? Was it like, "This is too good to be true?" Or, like, walk me through what that mental process was like?
I'll explain on the acquisition side because this actually was very interesting. So I'm a licensed commercial real estate agent, have been for the last 6 years. Never was super big into hospitality, focused a lot on multifamily and land development. So when we found this deal, we were looking at it. Obviously, we were trying to find comps. Super hard to find comps for campgrounds, especially something that you're trying to turn into a glamping resort. These properties just don't sell that often. So we really didn't know what type of cap rate to put towards it. We didn't know how the bank was going to appraise it. So when we put in our offer, we were a little unsure at really if we were overpaying for it or underpaying for it. And it wasn't until we got back our appraisal where our appraisal came in $1 million higher than what we had offered for it.
The offer had already been accepted at that point.
Offer was already accepted. Yeah, we were just in due diligence at that point. And I don't even think the owner or the agent selling it knew how to kind of evaluate it because again, a lot of the numbers were like napkin, cash, they weren't really claiming as much as they probably could have been. But the appraiser looked at it from like just a pure land value for the 90 acres and where it was and gave us a value of $1 million over where they had it listed.
Holy shit, what was your reaction?
Yeah, we're like, well, it looks like we got a great deal then, and we're definitely doing this. Because before we were like, oh, are we overpaying? Because glamping was still so new that even when we were underwriting and like, how much average nightly rate are we going to get for a glamping tent? Like nobody knows. There's no comps. We basically looked at it and said, if a regular tent site where you have to bring your own tent goes for like, $70 a night, an RV site goes for about $100 a night, a hotel in the area goes for about $200 a night. We're like, we have to be somewhere, in that ballpark. We can't be under a tent site. Maybe we're around a trailer site because of the convenience of not having to have a trailer or bring a trailer. So it's like maybe we're in and around $150 a night because we're probably not at a hotel. So we were, guesstimating a lot of these numbers. So it was nerve wracking to, do a deal like this without having someone to look at and say, okay, they've done it before, it's worked, so we can just replicate what they were doing. We were kind of blazing our own trail. So getting that appraisal back definitely helped concretely make our decision very easy.
Yeah, I was, speaking with Ian Joseph yesterday. He's doing the micro resort in West Virginia, and I had recently seen a post that he made about, some of his core values for his hospitality group, and one of them was that they see the potential in things that other people don't, and I really loved that that was one of their core values. But at the same time, it's like being that person that sees the value in something that no one else sees, it starts to make you second guess yourself sometimes. So I can only imagine when you got that appraisal back in hand that you were like, let's do this thing and let's do it big. So, with that being said, did you have the vision of glamping before you guys closed on it? Or was that something that evolved post closing?
No, glamping was a big part of why we were buying the site. It was purely to transition it. Like our long-term goal from the site was the first year to 2 years, we ran it as kind of like a hybrid model because we were slowly adding the glamping sites where we ran it as almost two brands under one, where it was the old campground that kind of already had a name, already had revenue coming in. People would just come bring their tents or bring their trailers. And then we were added on this kind of like sub brand underneath it which was all glamping. So on Airbnb, it was a glamping brand. And then on our website, where we were taking all of the old bookings, it was a campground still. So it was kind of the split thing. It worked out okay for probably the first year or two until the glamping side grew so big that it was kind of meshing in a bad way with the old campground site. Who, those people are more there for long weekends to party, have drinks, barbecues, play music and be loud. Whereas our glamping clientele is way more in the mindset of let's have a quiet, relaxing, 2-night getaway in the forest. So meshing those two worlds did not work out in the long run, but it did help us in the first 2 years as the glamping was still kind of catching on and getting trendy, and as we were adding sites.
I would imagine that a lot of the glampers were not only coming for a quiet weekend, but also to explore the local. They were coming from out of town to explore those national parks versus the people that perhaps frequented the campground before you bought it are more local to the area and just come from like 30 minutes away or something for their weekend.
Exactly.
Okay. So I know that you said that it benefited you in the first 2 years, but how did you guys overcome that?
We just made enough sites on the glamping side that the revenue was able to overtake the camping side. And at just one point, we had to make the final decision to say, is the campground revenue worth it to hurt the brand for the glamping guests? And at some point, it just wasn't worth it anymore. The complaints we were getting from our staff weren't worth it, right? Like, since we got rid of the camping guests, we've had no issues for security, for people having parties, because you don't get a group bigger than like 4 people to like 6 people maximum. Whereas before, we would get people to book out 5 or 6 tent sites side by side. And there's, 30, 40 people who might be the nicest people in the world and might be super respectful. But like anybody, if you get 40 people together, it's going to get loud, it's going to get rowdy. You're playing music, and it's just not the right energy we wanted on the site. So once we were able to replace that with glamping revenue, it was a very easy decision at that point, and one that we are so happy we made.
So you don't have any tent camping sites anymore?
No, the only thing you can book on our site now is what we have in our own accommodations. Nobody's allowed to bring up their own trailers or their own tents or anything of that nature.
No BYOT anymore. You got to stay in our
No,
tent.
exactly. We started there, but we're moving over to the more glamorous world.
Interrupting this episode to offer some additional value. If you're thinking about buying a short term rental, whether it's your first one ever or the first time you're actually treating it like a real investment, I made something just for you. It's the short term rental acquisition checklist. I made it in real time as we walked through the acquisition process of a new short term rental that we purchased for ourselves. It's the exact framework I use when analyzing properties to add to our own portfolio. Think of it as your step-by-step guide to staying organized, running the numbers, navigating due diligence, and making confident decisions instead of second-guessing yourself all the way through the process. It's all through the lens of someone who knows the importance of branding and marketing. If you're ready to evaluate properties like an investor and set yourself up for success from day one, head to the show notes and download it for free. Let's turn your future listing into your legacy. Okay, back to the show. I recall earlier you said that you made some of the tents pet friendly, or you might have added a second bed for the underperformers. How could you have like predicted which ones would be the underperformers? Was it a design aspect? Was it a location aspect on the lot? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting question. I've scratched my head on this point a couple times because what we had done for all of our glamping tents is we actually gave them a theme. So for some of them, had like an outdoorsy kind of foresty theme. Some of them we had more like palm tree theme. One of them we just called the romantic tent, and it was more like a couples theme. We had a lot of different themes, and I think some of them just weren't as popular with guests than other ones. And I would notice it in the bookings. I'm like, maybe the name just isn't as catchy, or maybe the design just isn't as catchy on Airbnb. And after a year, we would look back and see what were our lowest performers. And maybe it had something to do with where they were on site, but the guests truly don't know that when they're booking on Airbnb. They do on our website a little bit more because they can see a map. So we just started adding pets to the ones that were the weakest performers, and it ended up making them some of the best performers because people love glamping with their pets. We noticed it.
That's wild.
Yeah, we noticed it. It's not the easiest for logistics and cleaning, and our staff would always tell us, like, guys, you don't realize how much extra work is included when they bring in a dog or something like that, just to get out all the hair from the canvas. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but we had an amazing team, and that was a big reason for our success.
I would love to dive into a little bit more of the financial side of things with the glamping tents because I know you said you were booking those. Was it $200 ish, give or take a night? So, what did it cost to install a glamping tent?
Our glamping tents typically like decks. I'm talking all in the canvas tents, the decks, the furniture, regrading the site a little bit, adding pea stone to make it look nice, the fire pits. They usually were all in for about 12 to 15,000 dollars.
That's crazy.
Yeah, pretty
So, you
reasonable.
made that back in I'm not a mathematician, but probably a
half a
year.
season.
Yeah, okay, less than a year.
Yeah, on average, all of our glamping tents were reaching about 25,000 to 30,000 in revenue per season.
A tent.
So we would make it back within half a season, and really everything would last. Like we thought the attrition on those tents were going to be a lot worse than they were.
The canvas, you mean?
Yeah, the canvas. We thought they were going to be kind of busting, or even like the zippers or something was going to go almost every season. But we had a couple of them last, 3 seasons before we had to replace them, before the color started to fade. Some of them got a little bit more moldy than others, just kind of depending on how much trees they had above them. Because to us, not thinking about the long term, we just thought as far as we can get a tent into the forest, the cooler it's going to look on photos and when you're inside the tent, not realizing that if it doesn't get sun, with all the moisture, it actually gets moldy on the inside and on the outside. So as much as we wanted to push them into the forest as much as we could, we actually had to start bringing them back out where they're a little bit in the sun to kind of dry them off with the heat.
That makes sense. Were you able to like and put heater? Well, there was no electric in there. I was gonna say like a space heater or something. Like you didn't
The
even have that
tents never,
capability for the glamps.
no.
Okay. So that was all in Canada, but you're no longer in Canada anymore. Where are you?
Yeah, I'm down in Tulum, Mexico now, helping build out a short-term rental management company. So we manage villas for owners from around the world, as far as Asia, America, Canada, Europe, Mexico. A lot of people come down to Tulum because it's a very tourist town. They buy these beautiful properties, but they don't live here. So they need somebody that they can trust to help them manage it, to help them get the best ROI on their investment. So that's where we come in, somebody that they can trust, basically hand off the keys to and let us take care of absolutely everything for them.
So do you have now your real estate license in Mexico as well?
So this is actually, you don't need your real estate license to manage. You do to sell, but all we're doing is managing the actual villas on Airbnb, on our direct website, booking.com and VRBO and all the different OTA channels.
So what pushed you from Canada to make the move to Mexico?
You know what? I was always looking for a reason to come down here full time. I've been coming back and forth to Tulum for almost 5 years now and absolutely love it. It's a beautiful town. It has an amazing community. And I was just finding a reason to come down. And sure enough, this January, I had some business partners of mine offer me this opportunity to make a sister company to a management company that they already have. And it was a very, very easy decision for myself. I think it was just the right time, the right place, the right opportunity, and I instantly said yes to them.
Wow. So what are the life differences between Canada and Mexico other than the weather, I'm sure?
Yeah, I would say the biggest one that's noticeable every time I go back to Canada is just everybody is in a rush. It just everybody feels like they're trying to get somewhere so quickly, especially when you're driving. Everybody's trying to, get to from point A to point B as fast as possible, and it's just stressful. Where it's down here, it's not necessarily island time because people are motivated, entrepreneurial, and hustling down here, but you just don't feel like you're getting rushed from one place to the next. One of my business friends came down here and said it perfectly. He's like, working 70 hours a week in Mexico feels like 40. So he's like, you could hustle like double as hard working, but I think just with the sun and the energy and the beach and the jungle, it just makes it feel like you're not working as hard, which is funny because I've felt that exact same way before he even said it.
That's yeah, offline, was having technical issues, and Zach was like, "Anytime you wanna just reschedule, like, it's whatever." And I'm like, that's not a typical response to, like, somebody in the US. They're, like, kind of annoyed that I took up time on their calendar and then messed up.
Yeah, no, exactly. It just becomes a part of you where it's like life just feels more simple down here. Things are a little bit easier. Even going out to properties and do work, a lot of time you're doing it in like a muscle shirt, shorts, and flip flops. Like all business meetings I go to are in flip flops. So it just makes the entire energy of the meeting just feel so much more relaxed and more friendly. And I've met owners down here who are worth a lot of money and they're wearing a muscle shirt, shorts, and flip flops. Like that's just what you're wearing, and it makes it feel a lot more, level than suits and ties.
So, the property management company in Mexico is called Zuna Stays. How many doors do you guys manage?
So we manage 7 villas right now and have another about 15 in the pipeline that we're likely going to be bringing on,
Wow.
in the next couple months here. So we've been growing at a steady pace.
So what did it look like to grow that clientele from basically scratch? I know you said you started from a sister company, but I mean, it's a new location, so it basically is starting from nothing, right?
Yeah, the sister company helped, and they've been amazing business partners for me because they kind of gave me all the ropes of what not to do. Here's some contacts that you can reach out to. Here are some villas that you could also manage and have those conversations with. But there was a lot of trust, especially in our first couple owners. I just moved down here this year, so it took a little bit to build that trust, show them what I've done in Canada, to let them know I understand Airbnb, I understand the short-term rental space. Yes, this is a different country, but at its core, pricing, occupancy, guest relationships, a lot of it remains the exact same. And part of what Mexico was missing is somebody in our space doing it at a high level, trying to get those 5-star reviews and doing all of the little things along the way that allow us to achieve that, when most of the management companies down here just say yes to everyone and everything, and then their quality declines. And then owners get upset, guests get upset, things don't get resolved. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're not a super host anymore, and you got an average rating of like 4 stars.
Oh, that sounds like my worst nightmare. What does zoning look like there? We talked about it in Canada, but is it like as particular in Mexico?
No, not really. Most places here are allowed to be Airbnbs. They understand that tourism is such a big part of this market. I can't speak to the rest of Mexico, but at least for Tulum in the Quintana Roo region, they're very tourism friendly. So almost all Airbnbs are allowed in almost all zonings at this point. So hopefully it doesn't change.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, knock on wood on that.
yeah, exactly.
So what is your typical day as a, property manager in Mexico look like? I know you said you get to wear your tank top and your flip-flops, but what's the actual operations side look like?
Yeah, it's honestly a lot behind the computer right now. We have an amazing team with a director of operations, a full housekeeping staff, full maintenance staff with a maintenance manager already. So a lot of my day involves doing employee payouts. So making the payouts to all the employees, because the payouts down in Mexico happen a little bit different. Most people get paid on a weekly basis, not bi-weekly or monthly. So doing a lot of accounting, doing a lot of numbers, checking out pricing for all of our villas, checking out occupancy, coordinating with maintenance, housekeeping, and concierge and our owners to make sure that items are getting taken care of. A big part of it is still meeting new owners, trying to sign on more villas for the company. Being the CEO right now, another big part of it's the marketing side, the sales side, building out a lot of the SOPs for when we onboard a villa, building out SOPs for what happens if there's maintenance requests that come from owners, that comes from guests, making sure that the flow is there, and honestly finding and hiring more staff because of the rate that we're growing at. It's almost like I'm always on the hunt for more good people who are local to this area or who that want to move to this area. So that kind of rounds it out. But as you know, with short-term rentals, no day is ever the same. I can think I'm going to do this one day, and then, all it takes is one guest having an issue over here, and I'm running to the grocery store to get them a bottle of champagne to bring over to help make them happy. So, I always want to say that it's easy and that stuff is going to be the same. But yesterday, for instance, I met a guest to check them into one of the villas because I just like doing that sometimes. It's so much fun to meet them, hear where they're from, hear their story, show them around the property, show them all the cool things of the property, and then also give them recommendations for things that they want to do while they're in town. So I always sometimes like doing that at least once or twice a week.
Wow, you are really boots on the ground if you're running to get champagne to say sorry.
Just to save those reviews, like, how important they are. And, I'd rather be the one who gets to them in the next like 10 minutes than wait, 2 hours, 3 hours, or a day goes by before somebody can make it out there and get it for them.
Yeah. So, what does the difference in your role look like between what you were doing in Canada with Grotto to what you're doing in Mexico with Zuna?
Yeah, I would say in Grotto, I was way more hands off on the day-to-day operations. We had a full team up there during the busy season, from everything from managers to hospitality coordinators to housekeeping to maintenance. My main role with that company was very much on the guest side, dealing with the bookings as they were coming in, dealing with the guest communications. We had a VA that was helping me a lot with that. So overseeing him, making sure that the messaging was going out correctly, making sure that our pricing was exactly where it needed to be, and then also supporting our marketing division to make sure our social media was going well, make sure email campaigns were going well. So I was very much on the back end of that company. And in Zuna, I'm very much on the front end of the company. As you know, with startups, and when you're the CEO, you kind of got to do a little bit of everything to make sure that things are going correctly as you're building out the team and building out the systems.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you were even more of like the visionary maybe in Grotto, and now you're the integrator almost in Zuna. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to take all my business lessons from Grotto and from some of the other stuff I've done to implement more systems sooner into Zuna than later. But like anything, people get sick, are not in the right area at the right time, and then I'm fully on board to jump in and make sure things happen. So in that sense, I would definitely be the integrator and making sure the ball doesn't get dropped.
What was the biggest change for your involvement with Grotto when you moved down to Mexico?
Honestly, nothing. That's how
You're
like
still doing all of that for Grotto in addition to Zuna?
I'm still able to do it all, especially now, with Grotto at the beginning was super stressful. I was doing everything by myself, but as the company's grown, I've been able to bring on more help, especially on the guest communication side to the point this was my first year that I did not have our email or our PMS system on my phone. I would only have it on my laptop and I would check our emails maybe twice a day just to make sure everything was happening the right way.
I wish I could slow clap that because I feel like I have every single app on my phone that like I've turned off some notifications, but that still doesn't keep the little like bright red number from staring me in the face.
Yeah, it was a big deal for me too. I was very happy when I was able to do it and stressful for the first couple weeks until you realize that, they actually know what they're doing, they're answering the right messages. And from time to time they miss something, but that's totally normal. We're all human. Nobody's absolutely perfect.
So I would love to jump into some of the marketing tactics that you use to grow the account for Grotto Getaway. I know I'm kind of bouncing back to Grotto, but I just took a look at your Instagram page and you have 30, almost 31,000 followers. So walk me through what it was like to grow that audience. What were your tactics and how that kind of fueled into the ROI for those marketing strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a huge help we had with our marketing division is we made the decision right from the beginning. It was me and three other business partners that none of us are marketing gurus. And luckily, my fiance at the time ran a social media marketing agency. So, it was an easy pick in terms of who we were going to hire to help us run our social media account. So, I got to give her a lot of credit because she really had the vision for how we were going to get out there, how we were going to market this, the types of content that we needed, the types of photos we needed, and kind of the direction and strategy. So I was obviously overseeing the marketing and helping, drive that vision forward with as much as that we could do on site. But she was really the brains behind getting us up to the 30,000 followers. So some of the biggest things that we did that were the most impactful were definitely working with influencers. We tried micro influencers and the macro influencers and actually found that the micro were a way better return on investment. The people who kind of focused in our local area had a way bigger attraction to our market where we would do a collaboration giveaway post and as soon as they hit post I could see the bookings just rolling in from that post, like unbelievably. We never did anything else that worked so well that we did it basically once a season where we would do a 2 night free giveaway collaboration with a micro influencer in the area. And as soon as that post went live, we would get, sometimes up to 15, 20 bookings just off of that.
That's got to feel so good.
It feels unbelievable because, spending money for somebody to go up there with an iPhone and take content, sometimes hurts to think about how easy it is. But when you see the results, I mean, you can see why these people have a job doing what they do. But on the flip side of that, I will say I think the macro influencers helped us get onto more like blog sites and helped us get kind of a wider reach. Also helped drive a couple more followers. That was really good for that. Like some of our best videos got up to about 1 million views on some of those videos. So I feel like that kind of helps with more of that brand recognition. Got us on like a lot of local blog sites, which also really helped. Gets us on some of those like top 10 glamping site lists, which I think also kind of fuels the SEO algorithm. And basically, it got us to the point where for this past season, we actually had only one paid influencer go up there, where a lot of the people we had go up there actually just came for a free collaboration where they would post, they would do content, and we just gave them a 2 night free stay because our page was doing so well that they wanted to collaborate with the page that has 30,000 followers. So it was awesome to make it to that point.
That's a little like almost counterintuitive. You would think that like when you started out, like it would be easier to try and go the free influencer route, like the free stay and not pay them, but it kind of flipped the script.
Yeah, exactly. It ended up working out. So And then the results from that were incredible. So this past season, we were about 71% direct bookings off of our website,
I was
which
literally about to ask you that. 71%. That's crazy.
unbelievable. And I think a lot of that comes from the trust from Instagram. We're on TikTok as well. We nowhere near as big on TikTok, but the community that we built on Instagram over the 4 years, I think really knows, likes, and trusts us, and yeah, books directly with us, which has been the best thing ever.
So how many, if I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but how many guests are repeat guests that come back and stay at Grotto more than once?
See, it's hard because we changed PMS softwares about 3 times throughout those years. I know, and you lose a little bit of that data, but we do have just some, like, tangible numbers where I know our staff even mentioned it, where somebody would come stay in, like, the romantic tent, then they're like, "Oh, I wanna bring my kids next time and stay in one of the trailers because that sleeps 4, whereas this was just a couple's trip." So, we definitely had people coming back and trying out the different types of accommodations, which I think really worked from us instead of just like only focusing on tents or trailers or domes. I think having a mix of like sleeping 2 people up to 6 people, up to 8 people, and different variations really helped with those repeat guests if they had a good time.
That is very reassuring to me. The property that I'm at now, the Geodesic Dome, it's on 5 acres, lot less than the 100 acres that Grotto's on, but still room to grow for more than 1 unit. In 2026, we hope to add the second one, and we were kind of going back and forth, like, do we this is the Geodesic Dome, we're aiming to go market towards get families, like, with young kids, and then I was like, "Do we do, like, a couples getaway, or do we just, like, double down on the family vibe?" And my branding background tells me to, like, go into one niche and stay in that niche, but the other part of me is like, I want the stay to be different each time they come, and that's a great way to do it, is to have just a different group of people that you're traveling with, so that makes me very happy to hear you say that.
And it's a, I could see it from both ways. Like you said, it's like, do you just focus on it? Like we even threw around the idea at one point of just being an adults only campground. Or like, maybe we're not meant for kids. Maybe we just focus on the couples and the adults. But I'm so happy we never went down that path because I think it just opened us up to a way bigger market. And people like camping with their kids. Like it's just a normal thing. They like bringing their pets. They want to show their kids. They want to take them out to the forest. So I think, at least in hospitality, my opinion is, broader is not wrong by any stretch because you're just opening up yourself to a bigger audience.
Okay. So throughout your commercial real estate, I'll do my final question because we're almost at time. Throughout your commercial real estate background, growing Grotto, starting from scratch with Zuna, what is your one piece of advice for people looking to be the best in their brand and their market?
I would say, if anything, I look back and some of the things I wish I would have done is I wish I would have focused on one area sooner rather than later. So I think for anybody listening, a piece of advice I would give them is like pick something, stick with it, and be the best in it would be the number one thing. Because I've done a lot of everything, and I say, I'm a jack of all trades, but a master of none. So I've tried everything in real estate, but sometimes I'm like, I wish I would have just picked that one thing. Like when I did that Airbnb, 8 years ago, if I would have just stuck to that and only did Airbnbs for all of those 8 years instead of trying multifamily, trying commercial, trying this, I'm like, imagine where I would be today. So that would be my advice if anybody's listening.
Laser focus, huh?
Yep, exactly.
Very good, very good. And Zach was so generous to offer us 10% off of your stay in Tulum. I will put for any of the properties that he manages, I will put that discount code. It's back to Zuna Paradise, but I'm going to put that discount code as well as the link to his Zuna Stays website in the show notes so that you guys can, if you're going to Mexico, get 10% off a stay in a beautiful villa in Tulum. Thank you so much, Zach, for spending the time with us and letting us get kind of an inside glimpse into Grotto and Zuna and all the things that you're doing. Keep up the good work.
Awesome. Thanks, Ali, for having me.
You just completed another episode of the Brandon Market Podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.